Good morning, and welcome to the virtual worship service for Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Troy Moon, and I'm presenting the service today. Lay-led worship is a long-standing tradition at A2U2, and most of our services for the summer will be lay-led. In the fall, we'll welcome our new minister, Reverend Donna Dolham. This week, our offering will be shared with Youth and Family Outreach. YFO serves children 6 weeks of age to 5 years and their families. It currently operates an early care and education facility established in 1986. The program is proud of its nutrition program using only whole ingredients and serving meals and snacks for the YFO community. The staff members of the program are multiracial and include folks from several immigrant communities. YFO has a long history of connection to both First Parish and A2U2. In the past, several A2U2 folks have served on the board, including Catherine Ruby, Kathy Stead, Catherine Falwell, Julie Harrison, and Sonia Tonelli. If you'd like to contribute to the offering, you can go to our website and use the donate button at the top of the page. Choose the option to give to the plate. You can also send a check to the church. And finally, a reminder that we'll have our virtual coffee hour at 10:45 this morning, and the link for that meeting is on the website. We hope you'll join us then. We begin our service this morning with words by Lynn Harrison. Committed to respond to the call of a wounded world, we join together this day with loving hearts, hands, and minds. Embracing the interconnected web of water, air, and earth, we light a fire of sustaining hope, ever bright with love and justice. May we bring forth this day new wisdom, strength, and courage to create a new world, not of wealth, but of well-being. A world of new peace and abundance for all. As we give thanks for this earth, our shared and singular home, may we dedicate ourselves to its ongoing care, rising to the calls deep within us and all around us. May we respond today and always with courage and with love. In 2007, the Portland City Council established a green ribbon committee, so to speak, local experts on environmentalism and climate issues, and created a report called the Sustainable Portland Report, and it was issued in 2007. And in their report, they determined that climate change is likely the greatest threat to the city of Portland since the Great Fire of 1866. And as you probably know, you may have heard and read that this Great Fire in 1866 was, that was created by some fireworks, burned much of downtown Portland, and burned City Hall and burned the Central Fire Station and many homes and businesses. And it was great devastation. And fortunately, Portland, whose motto is Resurgam, did in fact rise again and has become a thriving city by the sea. But certainly climate change is a serious threat to the way of life that we have here in Portland. Right now, the city is conducting a climate action plan, and as part of that work, we've studied what we might expect for impacts of climate change on the city. Certainly the most obvious one is sea level rise, and we expect that there's a pretty good chance that by 2050 we'll see 2 feet of sea level rise that affects our our coastline and changes how we do business on Commercial Street and in Bayside and other parts of the city. But by 2100, we expect that we'll see at least 4 feet of sea level rise, and potentially we could see as much as 10 or 11 feet of sea level rise by 2100. Again, and that would be just a tremendous change and a huge impact on the city. But it's not just Portland that's being affected by climate change. We're just a small, place in the northeast of the United States. All around the world, impacts of climate change are becoming very pronounced. Heat is of great concern to people around the world, and we're seeing temperatures rise to almost unlivable states in certain parts of the Middle East, in India, Pakistan, and it's becoming a real challenge. And in other parts of the world, there's intense floods and hurricanes and typhoons. And around the world, populations are very much at risk of being displaced and having to move from their homes because of the impacts of climate change. In fact, by 2050, we anticipate that millions and millions and millions of people will be moving around the globe because the places that they currently live are no longer tenable for them. And some of the places that are the hardest hit are places that are least responsible for climate change. Less developed countries that don't have large industry that emit a lot of carbon, but they're being affected dramatically by the changes that are caused by industrialized countries in the West that continue to emit large amounts of carbon. And so we're seeing that as people move around, many people are starting to come here to the United States, and in Portland we're no exception. And if you recall, recently we had many folks arrive from, they came from the southern border, but they had started their journey in Central Africa, which is amongst the hardest hit places in the world for climate change. And as we continue to emit carbon and exacerbate the climate conditions worldwide, we should expect to see more and more refugees. And it's our responsibility to do what we can to mitigate carbon emissions to reduce the impact on populations around the world.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah yeah, oh yeah yeah, oh yeah yeah, oh yeah yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah yeah, 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 oh yeah yeah.
So people ask, well, how bad is carbon? How bad are carbon emissions? Haven't we been taking action, reducing emissions globally? Since we first started hearing about the problem. Well, back in 1988, Professor Dr. James Hansen from NASA had his famous appearance at the U.S. House of Representatives and gave a dire warning about what we're seeing for climate change. So back in 1988, he noted that, number one, the Earth is warmer than at any time in the history of instrumental measures, and that global warming is caused by human activity. And it was big news at the time, but it quickly faded away. And in terms of how we've been doing since Dr. Hansen's warning to the world, you can see that we're doing very poorly. In fact, globally, we've had more carbon emissions since he gave his speech to the Congress in 1988 than we had in the entire previous history of the world before then. So clearly we're going in the wrong direction. And now we have young voices who are explaining to us exactly what the problem is. We haven't had enough action. Science is telling us that we need to reduce CO2 to net zero by 2050 at the latest, if we have any hope of keeping the climate at 2 degrees Celsius. And really, the hope is fading quickly that we can accomplish that. So I think it's really important to listen to voices who are telling us that we need to get moving. We need to take action to preserve the future for ourselves and for future generations. And it's important to listen to their voices. And so I have several that I want to share, both some voices you are probably familiar with, but some that may be new to you, but are vitally important that people here in the West particularly listen to.
Clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight. You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
Thank you. I am Hilda, and I am the founder of Fridays for Future in Uganda. I am missing my classes right now, same way I have missed them for the last 6 weeks to create climate awareness. It's not a surprise because I once missed 3 months of school due to the effects of climate change we experienced in my family and community. And my father wasn't able to raise my tuition fees. I am a victim of this whole climate crisis, and I am not ashamed to say so. After the massive effects of climate change in my home village, the heavy rains, the strong winds that washed away our crops, leaving the land bare, the constant dry spells that left the streams dry, my parents had to sell off our land and livestock to sustain our lives. And when the money was over, it was a question of survival and death. I am lucky that I'm still surviving, and I will I am lucky that I am still surviving, and I will not take this chance for granted because people are dying every day. I made a decision to protect the only place I call Earth. And by this, I joined fellow young activists all over the globe to protect our future. Through endless fights, sacrifices, we hustle our way because this is our future. I will tell you that we are a generation of scared people, but very ambitious, very united, very persistent, and very good at action.
Climate action! Climate action!
A rallying cry which can be heard on the streets of Kampala every Friday. Like thousands of students across the world, these young Ugandans have decided to go on strike once a week to protest against climate change. The young leader of these rallies is 14-year-old Leah. Her fight for the environment started in 2017 when heavy rain in Uganda triggered devastating landslides. Watching the scenes on the news, she realised that action had to be taken.
Right now, we are striking. We want climate awareness for the people. And we also want government attention. We are young people and we are fighting for our future. And we protest every Friday to fight for our future and the Mother Nature.
With her friends, Leah has asked the Ugandan government to be active in climate change in order to protect the planet. She hopes that Uganda will join other African nations like Kenya and Rwanda to try and reduce pollution by banning the use of plastic bags.
As we see here, people are dumping polythene bags, and our main issue of protesting is to tell the authority to stop producing the polythene bags that are affecting people's lives. I think people of my age are coming up to protest because they know they have the biggest stake in our future and they are trying to fight for it. I want the adults to realize that they also have a stake in the future. So let them stand up and fight for their kids' future.
Good morning, my name is Amy.
And my name is Siri, and we're representatives from Solarize Portland, a group advocating for solar arrays on school buildings in Portland.
Yeah. We all know our futures will be impacted by climate change, and that's why we must work as a collective we must work as a collective to ensure that our communities continue to be the best, to continue to be the best place offering opportunities for all. And that's why we should all know that climate change will affect everyone, but most communities will, some communities will be affected than others. Neighborhoods with less resources will probably be the one to face the climate change crisis. In order to ensure an equitable future for all, we must develop systems that improve accessibility to crucial resources. In order to accomplish this, we must include all community voices in the discussion. If we listen to the needs of the individuals who are most affected, Portland and South Portland as a whole will become more resilient. Thank you.
In 2050, we will be 48, and climate change will be a factor in our lives every day. Climate change is no longer going to happen, it is happening, and it will affect our generation the most. I love our cities, both Portland and South Portland, and I want to protect it not just for my generation, but the next generations to come. Imagine widespread Lyme disease outbreaks or Commercial Street underwater. These are not versions of a dystopian version of Portland and South Portland. These are realities our generation will have to confront. For too long, our leaders have either ignored the evidence or refused to take action, and we cannot afford to do this anymore. In order to diminish the impacts of this crisis and protect Portland for future generations, we need to start taking action now. And that is why we are so grateful that both cities have taken action to create this collaborative plan. And I'm hopeful about the future of our cities.
We need a moral breakthrough. Climate change, children are being exposed to high levels of lead from drinking water and other sources. And this risk falls heavily among African Americans and Latinos, but also poor whites. It's causing all kinds of problems with their health. Those who have contributed the least to climate change are suffering the most. Low-income families and people of color tend to be more likely to have living conditions and jobs that increase the health risk of extreme heat. They also get hit hardest by natural disasters because of barriers. And think about it, we just had a major hurricanes hit the South. All of the southern states, except one, I believe, denied Medicaid expansion. And what people need right now is Medicaid expansion.
and go with me. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. If they say no, I'll go anyhow. If they say no, I'll go anyhow. If they say no, I'll go anyhow. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way.
So when we hear from Greta and Hilda and Leah and Amy and Siri and Reverend Barber, that globally countries around the world are not doing enough to combat climate change, are they right? Well, if we look at maps kind of showing the commitments that these countries have made and our country has made to fight climate change, we find that our actions and our commitments are clearly inadequate. Many of the most industrialized countries are currently on pathways that would cause global temperatures to rise well in excess of 3 degrees centigrade. In fact, the only countries that have made pledges and taken actions that are meaningful in terms of reducing emissions to keep us within 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade increase are countries that are already largely feeling the impacts of climate change. So we clearly need to do better. So this graph shows the scale of effort that will be required if we want to steepen that declining line of carbon emissions in order to achieve the goals set by the Paris Climate Accords. You'll note that our current pledges and policies and targets show a continued increase in carbon emissions, which is clearly the wrong way. But if we take action in order to meet that 2 degrees centigrade increase, we have to be very serious. And you can see that the angle of emission decline is fairly steep. But to meet that 1.5 degree target, we're overdue for action, and we need to really make some serious changes in how we live our lives and operate our economy. We need to make them now. And I think it's worth looking at what are the differences in climate impacts if we have an increase 1.5 or 2 or 3 degrees. So this animation demonstrates what those impacts might be. So as you see the dark purple moving across the globe, you can see that that's basically increasing misery, increasing impacts of climate change from heat, from flooding, from drought, insects, just a variety of impacts that we know we can expect. So that's the difference between a curve that declines and leads to a climate that we're more accustomed to and is more livable. And we can see as the temperatures increase, the challenges increase, and the difficulty in inhabiting certain parts of the world becomes much, much more pronounced.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope.
hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
So when we look at maps showing inadequate pledges and actions by governments around the world, and we see the impacts of climate change that are already starting to happen, it's easy to become despairing and to be depressed about what is clearly a very bad situation. But I think it's important that we don't lose hope, and we don't lose our desire to reduce the impacts of climate change on people here and around the world. The pathway to keep global temperatures from exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius still exists. The latest science shows that that is the case. Yeah, and this message comes from no less an authority than Dr. Michael Mann, who's been one of our preeminent climate scientists for many, many, many years. But he points out that while literature demonstrates that we can still avoid reaching the permanent 1.5 C threshold, we're rapidly running out of time. So clearly action must be taken soon. But I think it's important that we don't get really hung up on specific degree goals and targets. They're important, and they allow us to gauge our progress or lack thereof as we move into the future. But I think what's more important is that we think about every ton of carbon that we don't emit is 1 ton of carbon that isn't going to be responsible for heating the temperature and causing misery for somebody around the world. That's really our moral responsibility, particularly as Westerners who live in a country that has largely been responsible for a lot of the warming that we see going on in the United States and European countries and and now China coming on board quickly with rising emissions. But it's us that have that responsibility, and we need to advocate for policies that can quickly reduce the output of carbon to prevent that misery in the future. And additionally, we have a responsibility to respect individuals around the world who are displaced because of climate change, whose homes are destroyed and whose climate becomes unlivable, through no fault of their own. We have a responsibility to treat them with dignity and respect and see their humanity. And so far, we have a very poor track record of doing that. We see, on the U.S. southern border, people fleeing from terrible conditions in Central America and other parts of the world land at our borders, and their children are taken from them, and they're placed in cages and people are forced into, horrible, nightmarish conditions rather than being treated with respecting dignity. So I think we need to take a page from the response that Maine and Portland in particular showed recently when we saw a lot of people coming into our community. We had vast community support to welcome our new neighbors. But we need to keep that in mind because it may not be so easy in the future. Rather than a few hundred people coming, perhaps we might see several thousands of people coming, and so the scale of response needed would be much more significant and much more challenging. And I hope that if that happens, that we are able to marshal that same spirit of humanity and welcome new people as they come to live in our part of the world, as their part of the world becomes less inhabitable. I conclude this morning's service with an affirmation from HIS.org, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which has been helping displaced persons since 1881. Welcoming the stranger. A core value of my faith is to welcome the stranger, the refugee, the internally displaced, the other. I shall treat him or her as I would like to be treated. I will challenge others, even leaders in my faith community, to do the same. Together with faith leaders, faith-based organizations, and communities of conscience around the world, I affirm I will welcome the stranger. My faith teaches that compassion, mercy, love, and hospitality are for everyone, the native-born and the foreign-born, the member of my community and the newcomer. I will remember and remind members of my community that we are all considered strangers somewhere, and that we should treat the stranger to our community as we would like to be treated, and challenge intolerance. I will remember and remind others in my community that no one leaves his or her homeland without a reason. Some flee because of persecution, violence, or exploitation. Others due to natural disaster. Yet others out of love to provide better lives for their families. I recognize that all persons are entitled to dignity and respect as human beings. All those in my country, including the stranger, are subject to its laws, and none should be subject to hostility or discrimination. I acknowledge that welcoming the stranger sometimes takes courage, but the joys and the hopes of doing so outweigh the risks and the challenges. I will support others who exercise courage in welcoming the stranger. I will offer the stranger hospitality, for this brings blessings upon the community, upon my family, and upon the stranger, and upon me.
There is more, Lord.